Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for our release webinar. We're really excited for all the new features we've released today, and we can't wait to show them off. By the way, I am John Farrell, the co-founder and CEO of Well Database. We wanted to keep this webinar pretty tight, so we only schedule it for 30 minutes. We'll be focusing mainly on the features in this release, and we won't be doing a full walkthrough. If you want to see a more in-depth webinar, we do a weekly Using Well Database webinar every Thursday afternoon, and you can find that link to the webinar on our site. We also won't be doing a Q&A at the end of this one, again, just for time purposes, but feel free to submit your questions during the webinar, and we'll be sure to get those answered. Also, you can always follow up by emailing sales@welldatabase.com or find more info on our brand new website, which is welldatabase.com. One last final note before we kick it off. With the hard stop at 30 minutes, some questions may not be answered just yet, but don't worry, we'll be sure to get back in touch with you and follow up with anyone who has an outstanding question. So on to the new features here. The first thing you might notice is that some of the small changes with look and feel. The banner up top is a little bit smaller, the spacing's a little bit tighter, and all of this is done to try to maximize your screen real estate. Many of our menus and tools are all in the same places, with one big exception being the previous production analytics used to be across the top, and now it's nested in the menu with additional types of analytics. We will dive into all of that here in just a minute. But before we get to that, we'll start with the mapping updates. So for this search, I've already applied a first prod date filter, and I've zoomed into South Texas. If you haven't seen this relatively new update, in the filters you can toggle between all and applied filters, which helps to show you kind of exactly which filters are applied at any time. A little helpful tool there. But the big thing is that we are showing 47,000 well spots on this. Now that's new. If you've used Well Database in the past, you know that that number is significantly higher than it has been. And so we're really proud of our mapping optimizations that we've created to step up the number of spots without sacrificing speed. Our mapping interface is kind of unique in the way that you can customize colors and shapes and sizes and things, and also how it interacts with the analytics. So raising the numbers of spots was a bit of a technical hurdle. But kind of moving on, we go into the map tools, and the very first big update to see is under the well layer settings, where we have a couple of new visualization types. So before, we always had well symbols, spots, bubble map, and heat map, but we've added a grid map and a choropleth map. And so a grid map is a great way to basically grid up a certain area and do it by a property. I actually had it already set with the settings to do an aggregate of the sum of cumulative oil. It looks like I'm set at a 1 mile grid size and an automatic scale, and you can see kind of a cumulative oil chart. This is kind of a nice high-level view for any kind of search, but I think it'll be much more useful as we kind of dive in and we show you how you can do additional layers and layer on these different types of maps together. Same goes for the choropleth. You can select that. You can pick your shape, whether you're after a county or a state, and choose what you want to aggregate and what property you want to aggregate on. So again, we'll touch on both of those a little bit more in depth as we kind of zoom through all of our layers. So for now, I'm going to pop it right back to the well spots like we had it before, and we're already colored by well type. And so continuing with our map updates, we're going to pop into our layers dialog, where we have a ton of updates to kind of talk about. The first thing you might notice there is we've added a rig layer. And so this rig layer has been in beta for a little bit of time, so some of you may have seen it. There are some updates to kind of how it works and what you can do with it now. So I'm going to click on that. And first thing, we can give it a name, WDB rig layer works. Opacity is giving you the transparency of this layer. Depending on how many layers you're putting in, having the opacity is nice when things get too busy. The interactive checkbox is there so that you can choose whether you want this layer to be something you can click on, get data from, and interact with, or just have it as a background image so that you can use it more of a reference point. And then the period option for rigs will show the current, last 30, last 60, last 90-day rigs. So just a handful of options, but quick and easy. We'll leave that as current. And flip over to the visualization, and what you'll see is a similar interface to what we have when we were in the map tools. You can do this as spots with rigs, heat maps, bubble maps, grid, and choropleth as well. And again, with those, you can color by properties, use solid colors, whether you want to show laterals, bottom holes, all those things can be done on the individual layer. For our purposes, we'll go ahead and we'll color this by current operator. And then when I hit load, we'll see all the rigs pop up here. And then if we zoom in, we'll dive in here in a second and you'll see that the color of the well spot will be correlated to the operator for that rig. Okay, moving back into the layers, I am going to jump over data layers because that's a little bit more involved, and we'll touch on that in a second. And we're going to go into the WDB overlays. Now, these are some of the same overlays that you're used to seeing. There's obviously dozens of them in here. Every one of them now you can choose an opacity as well as whether you want these layers to be interactive. Now, that's a new thing for us, that each type of layer now has some interaction to it. And so since we're in the Eagleford area, let's go ahead and see what we have. We can go ahead and drop in the boundary and an ice patch. And we'll go ahead and make them both interactive for now. And I'll click load. And as you would normally expect, they pop up and you can see them on your map. But then now, since they're both interactive, we can click on these and utilize. And so let's dive in a little bit. And we can even click on this area of the ISO patch and choose to create an AOI from this now. And so what that will do, and it can take any shape from any file in our system and allow you to create an area of interest search based off of that data. This works with shape files that you bring into Well Database as well as the overlays that are built in. So that was a little bit of a funny one. I'm going to go ahead and just turn that up back to map here. But again, as you dive in and you utilize this, there are certain, if you were looking at elevations or if you were looking at formation depths or things like that that you want to zone in on, now you can click on any of those interactive maps. You can make an area of interest search out of them and then dive into your search that way. So really neat feature there. And so now I'm going to pop that open, get back into the layers one more time, and we're going to dive into a data layer. And so this takes a tiny bit of explanation to say. A data layer is going to be a well search that has its own set of filters and visualizations. And so you can add, depending on your package, any number of these to create a more in-depth map about what you're doing. So first thing we'll do, we'll go ahead and we'll add a filter to this background layer here. Since I'm going to make a background heat map on production, I'm going to go ahead and use the event dates. I'm going to choose the first production date of, we'll just say 1/1/2010. So production in the past 10 years or so. And then I'll apply that. And then under visualizations, I'm going to choose that we'll create this a heat map. And we'll go ahead and do a 20-year EUR BOE. Now the radius on a heat map, it works the same as it does in the tools, and it basically expands and helps the heat bleed into the other spots. You have to play with it a little bit depending on your zoom level. I'm going to just drop it at about a 10 here, which is fairly arbitrary, but still a good place to start. And when we load it, you'll see that the background starts to populate. So now my layer is a little bit light there, so I'm going to come back into it. I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to rename this because I should have named it in the first place to Wells Since 10. And then I'm going to come into the visualizations. I'm going to expand this up a little bit. And okay, so make it a little bit of a better. And this is actually sitting down beneath my other layers. And so I'm going to move it up a little bit higher so I can get a little bit more of a contrast there for my search. And so now we've got the 10-year EUR map sitting behind our current well spots. And of course, our current well spots still work the way they always have. You can interact with them. And of course, all of our analytics will still work with them and everything like that. One thing to note, and you probably just saw, is that leaving interaction on in other background layers can cause you to get pop-ups when you may not want to. And so if you do that, you might come in and want to edit these, turn off the interactive mode so that they stop popping up on you. At least I don't want this to in this case. So we'll knock both those off. And so course, now we've got 3 layers. We have our active well search, we have the rigs, and then we have a 20-year EUR map. Now, we might want to go ahead and add an additional layer. Again, there's no real good limit to what you can do here. Just it gets really messy after too many. And so what we might do is we might do a Eagleford Cume oil. And so for this, we're going to come into our filters. We're going to go back and we're going to choose under production, primary formation, type in Eagleford here. And put that over. We'll add that filter to this system. And we also, just Eagleford Cumes is what we're going to do. And then we're going to come in and we're going to choose a grid map this time. And we are going to do the sum of the cumulative oil. Bin size, we could do 1 mile. I'm going to bump it up to about 5 miles. Again, one of the things that you should just play with and figure out exactly what you're going for. And when we add this one, of course, since now we're rendering multiple layers, we have a few different things where the heat and the grid overlap. Now, this is another area where that opacity might come into play, because now that we have multiple layers, we might like to turn that heat map down a little bit. And so I can come into this, I can turn it to, let's just say 50% opacity, and we'll be able to see through it just a little bit more. Same thing with the ordering. I'm going to bring this up right underneath the heat map, and then now we've got a nice overlay that we can dive into a little closer. So again, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, there's a number of different overlays that you could create. And then if it gets muddy and you just don't need to see what it is, but you don't want to lose what you've created, you could come in here and easily just hide a layer. And then, perhaps come back in, create a new layer. So again, just for fun, let's create a vertical wells. And in this, we will just simply come into our general, we will come to the wellbore profile, and we'll select vertical. Now, when we apply this, because of where we're at, we're already zoomed in, we shouldn't have any problems with the number of spots. However, because this is more just a reference for me, I'm going to just throw it as a solid color, and I'll leave it black to kind of make it easy. And then I'll also kind of change the opacity down to probably that same 50% mark. And when I load those, then now we've got our active well search, we've got the 20-year EUR heat map, we've got the rigs, and then now we've got the vertical well spots as offsets. So again, the options are limitless. These few that we've shown are just kind of a handful of examples of what you could do. But as you can see, creating kind of a multi-tiered map with different kind of layers of intelligence is something it's pretty robust in our system. So now that hits kind of the high level of what we've done on the mapping side, we're going to kind of transition over to the analytics. And for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and hide these vertical wells. And I'll also go ahead and hide that heat map. It's not really necessary here. If we want to turn them on, of course, it's just as easy as flipping those back on. So moving over to the analytics now, we hit this drop down and you'll see the list of all of the types of analytics we now offer. So as you can see, permits, rigs are two kind of an event-based analytics. Completions, stimulations, and tests are still events but have some volume data to go with it. And then production, injection, and disposition are pure volumetric style analytics. Dashboards at the bottom are where all of our custom dashboards will go. So just to kick it off, we'll jump straight into permits. Now, up at the top of all of our analytics pages, you'll see the options to group by and then a date filter. And so I'm grouped by current operator, and I have a date filter of an approved date of a permit since 1/1/2010. And so just kind of working your way down, you can see each of the operators, how many permits they filed in that time period. And one thing that's a little bit new is that the interaction with Well Database before needed to have a match between what you were grouping by in the analytics and what it was colored by on the map, but that's not the case anymore. And so as you can see, we are colored by well type on the map. and then it's still showing the proper analytics. It's showing the connections to interact with the group that we're selecting in the analytics. So you can still see where the operator's wells are, even though they're not colored that way. One other thing you can do is, if you don't like this teal color, you can click and hit change color. And it brings up a very quick dialog. We can say go from teal to, we don't want to use a blue. We've already got a good blue in there, so we'll give it a purple. Why not? And then we'll save that. This will actually save to your profile, and that operator will show that color from now on. And so it's nice if you have particular colors that you want to assign to operators or any other types of properties, you can do that now. Another thing down beneath here, pie charts are kind of the standard here, but you can do a bar or column, and a new thing is a tree map, which is actually pretty cool to see when you have a large distribution like this, as where all the different operators sit. So it's a few new ways to visualize some of this data. To make this nice though, I do like it to be colored by the same property. So let's go ahead and change this to current operator alias. And then, these will all refresh. And after you, when these move down, we can see the total permitting activity over time here. And then you can see each operator's piece of that activity. And so if you hover over any one, you can see kind of what EOG's permitting has looked like over time, Sanchez, etc. This chart's pretty straightforward. It starts as a column stack, which is really my preference anyway. If you want to, you can make a line, an area, any of those kind of charts as well. Turn on log curves should you get higher numbers that you want to work with, and then monthly or a cum chart. The down beneath, we have a new pivot chart as well. And so right now you see we're seeing current operator alias over permit purpose. So that's interesting on these analytics, these new analytic types, that there are a few properties that are specific to that analytics. So this is a permit analytics page, and so you'll have a permit purpose is something that'll be here, and we'll see most of these wells are new drills, a few recompletes, field transfers. We are dealing with a whole lot of operators right now, and so one thing I typically always like to do when I'm trying to dive in and show some details is to whittle down my operators to, maybe just the top 5 in an area. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hit add. Once we apply those, we get a little bit of cleaner charts there. One thing to also show you on the filters, at the top with that all and applied, there's actually a search button as well. So if you are looking for a filter and you don't feel like digging for it, because honestly, there's just a lot of filters, you can just in here and start typing what you're looking for. So if you're looking for the field, just pull it up that way. So again, another little quick add-on that makes life a little bit easier for you. So back over to the analytics, we can see now a little bit more of a simplified chart. We can see a little bit better on the map where these operators are offsetting each other. One other quick note, and bouncing around just a little bit, but at this level, you're seeing we're not seeing the sticks, and so if I come down into the lateral section in my map tools, then I can change my minimum zoom level that the sticks appear at. And so if I just bring it down to a zoom level of 2, which is basically all the way zoomed out, all of the sticks will appear. One thing to note, when you do that, the size actually kind of scales odd, and so I like to turn it down to about 1 on the size, and it looks a little bit nicer to see. So anyway, just another little tip for how you can better visualize the data here. Moving on to rigs, similar to permits in just about every way. Few information, the specific parts that you can pull on the rigs are pretty limited. And so again, a lot of the same detail, a lot of the same information. And again, that pivot chart where you can customize that down below. Beneath that, kind of jumping over into these other types, the completions vary a little bit now. The same group by and the completed filter are up here. We have the same counts, but then when we get over to the right, we have a new chart, and we are looking at average IPs. I can change that to IP gas, water, any depths, lease acreage. Those are all in here based off of what was filed with the completion. Because we have some volumes over time, we actually show those here as well. So we're looking at the sum of the IP complete by the current operator. So this is the total IPs for those periods. If we want to change this to the average IP, we can see what each operator is averaging over time and kind of the trend in their IPs. There's only a handful of options here, but still they're nice. You have the time, you can do any of these percentile or other aggregates. Those same options we saw above are here for the different IPs and depths and things like that. Monthly and cum chart, log, scale, and then of course, again, the stacks, the lines and areas are all here. And then moving on, if we want to jump down to the production analytics, which again mirror what we had previously in the tabs moving across, where we had production by certain values. Now you group by in the drop down, so it gives you a little bit easier access that way. But the other thing we've done is we've added a few new fields in here as well, some frac data, so that we can group by the different chemicals, providers, fracking companies. Lots of different choices here we can do. And so the other options are still pretty similar to what we've had in the past, where you've got the BOE 6 and 20 oil, gas, and water. And those can be reflected down here as well with both monthly and daily volumes, as well as a GOR chart. We also have, of course, the type curve here, and then another addition is the forecast curve, which is going to be existing production up to date, and then and tack on of a kind of a PDP view of the decline of the wells. And so you can see how it goes to the existing date and then starts to do a quick decline there. This is utilizing our backend system decline curve tool that we have that will actually generate decline analysis for every well in our database on a 20-year scale moving forward. And so this is done well by well and just aggregated for this chart. So it's a pretty nice chart and pretty quick and easy to see kind of what a PDP view looks like there. Again, a lot of these charts have been what we've always had. So our events over time, if you're looking at where the permits or first production dates over time, this will give you kind of an activity look, similar to some of those other charts, but again, just a little bit different. And then a histogram. Right now, we're looking at a histogram breakdown of cum oil. There are literally more 100 and something options here. So if you want to look at 5-year oil, 10, 15, etc., there are so many options here. Just kind of dive into those. And then down at the bottom is our grid that we've used in the past that you've seen, with one notable exception. You can actually now customize your columns across the top. So before it's always been cum, oil, gas, and water. Now you can come in and you can add new columns. And so if I come add a column here, and say I want to choose the average 10-year EUR BOE. And we add that in here. Again, I'm not sure that's something anyone actually wants to see there, but again, it's there. You can drop in any of those fields, kind of customize this grid for you, export this out if need be. So it's a lot of tools kind of wrapped into one little package there. But again, these are a lot of the tools that we've had in the past on this production chart, and we've just kind of extended them out to some other areas as well. And so injection, disposition, we won't have a lot of injectors in the Eagle Ford, and so we won't really bother with that. Disposition, obviously the most popular you'll see is the flare volumes. We do capture the full disposition export, so not only is it flare volumes, it's going to be trucked volumes, rails, circulation, operations use, injections, and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot there. And so as you scroll down, again, you get the numbers over time to kind of understand what the flare volumes look like, those same kind of options beneath. And then, again, with some of these charts for activity, histograms, and then the table, again, is customizable at the bottom. And so those are the kind of built-in analytic dashboards that we talk about so often. The dashboards part at the bottom is something that is brand new and something that I personally am really excited about. And so what we have is a number of built-in dashboards that we've already done. So we'll go ahead and drop the operator comparison dashboard on here. And what you see, this is something that anyone can access Well Database. Anyone with a subscription can come in here and pull up this dashboard and immediately get a nice view of the wells, laterals, proppant, 12-month averages, cum averages, get a breakdown of lateral lengths, total proppants, the choke ranges, proppant loading. We're looking at a type curve, B-fit value, best fit, oil best fit B values, which is something we calculate on the back end as well. Type curves, basically, a number of items to kind of dive in and do some operator comparisons. And so this is one that we've created that's built in for you. There's a number of those in here. So another one might be a PDP overview, which is going to utilize those same forecasted values that we talked about earlier, but now they're kind of broken down a little bit differently. We're talking about how many wells we're talking about, what they've produced to date, and what a 30-year EUR looks like. And so again, if you're looking at high level, wanting to understand an area, this is a great way to do it. So obviously there's a number of built-in dashboards, and one great thing you can do from these is you can actually clone one of these to take it and then further customize it to make it your own. So we'll just leave this one PDP overview clone, hit create, and we'll see we have a new cloned one. Now you can come in here, edit any one of these charts, change it up to be whatever you need it to be. In addition to using a template or a clone of an existing dashboard, you can also come in and just create one from scratch if you like. So we'll create just a quick demo dashboard. We don't have a ton of time to touch on everything, but you'll see it's that easy. And now we can add a widget. So just a quick rundown of these. Our production charts are all of the production charts that you see in Well Database, the time, type curve, forecast data, those are all here. A time series chart would be any of the data that you want to do that's over a date axis that you want to have. KPIs were those cards that had just the numerical values with a title and maybe a subtitle if you want. And then if you used our custom chart in the past, you can come in here and create any one of those, including a few new ones like a box plot and the tree map that we saw earlier. And so creating these is as easy as choosing your widget type and then coming in to configure it. And we'll just use the defaults there. My title will be cum BOE. And this will be the average BOE. I can normalize this if I want to by any of my normalization properties. And then I can display this with a prefix, so a leading text and a suffix for a text afterwards, specify how many decimals I want, and whether I want to colorize this. And so this might be the case if you want to have a bad value versus a good value. You can create your ranges and give it two colors. And so we'll just leave this kind of as is, and you'll see quick and easy that you get that number in there. And so if you want to resize these, you grab the edge, you move things around, you hit things wherever you need to put them, and then it saves automatically for you. One other quick note about this, if you go into the custom chart, and if you're someone who's used the custom chart in the past where you do kind of you are able to lay out your axes and set this up, what we have here is a oil B value versus vintage year colored by operator alias. You might say, well, I really like this chart the way it's laid out. You can come into chart here, hit add to dashboard. We can pick that demo dashboard we just created, hit OK. And so if you like designing charts in a larger interface like this, then you can do that there. Come back into your dashboards, pick that demo dashboard right here. And there we go. We've got that KPI we created earlier, as well as the chart that we just added from the custom chart viewer. And so that's kind of just a super quick look at dashboards. There is so much more that you can do with them. But again, the goal today was to kind of just touch base on everything. And we have just a few more items that we want to talk about. The first of those items is going to be report subscriptions. And so in the past, you've been able to come in and create reports either from your list, where you can come and select wells and then create a report from them, or by going to My Home and then in the bottom right-hand corner using one of these reports as well. But now you can come through and you can actually come into My report schedules. And this is where you can come and decide that, hey, I want to see the rig report emailed to me on a weekly basis, or I want to keep track of the last 7 days permits and send them to me. So to add one, all you need to do is click add subscription, pick the report you want. So we'll go back to that rig report since it tends to be the most popular one. Say I want it weekly at 5 o'clock, and say I want to get it Saturday because I hate myself and work on the weekends. Hit next, tells you you're going to deliver it there, save it, and you're good to go. You'll get that email once a week with the rig report, and couldn't be easier. The next thing to tap on real quick is our lookup pages. And so it's not my favorite way of getting into the data, but I know a number of people like to do it this way. And that's when you go to Explore and you choose one of these ways to come into it. And so I've gone to Explore Operators and chosen Citation. And so you can see their information. This is all normal, but now you can get all of those other analytic types over on the left-hand side here. And so if you want to see rig activity, permit activity, completions, the same charts that you would have seen in the analytics with the map are here for your specific operator pages, which is really nice. I'm going to hop back over into the well browser for this last feature that I want to show you before we wrap up, and that is the introduction of dark mode. Today you gotta flip it on the map as well, but that will be automatic very soon. And so you can see just a simple dark mode, but again, very popular these days, and so we thought, why not roll it out in our system? And so that's a wrap. We've hit on all our features. Like I said, we were really excited about this, and we hope that you guys are as well. If you have any questions or anything we didn't get to, by all means, shoot us an email, sales@welldatabase.com, or you can just contact us on the site through our chat anytime. Thank you again, and I hope you guys have a great day.